Welcome to the Midrash Says Out Loud. This week we will be learning the Midrash Parasha, Lech Lecha. Hope this channel will open your mind to the great teachings of the sages and deepen your connection to the Torah. Remember to like, share, and subscribe as we journey through the Midrash each week. Before we begin, we invite you to turn on captions, settle in for the drive, or sit in your comfortable chair and relax as you listen to what the Midrash says out loud. Avraham is commanded to leave his land and travel to an unknown destination. Avraham and Sarah dedicated their lives to Hashem's service. Avraham influenced the men to serve Hashem, and Sarah taught the women. Avraham was 75 years old when Hashem's prophetic word reached him. Leave your land, your city of residence, and Hashem commanded him, your father's house. A bottle of perfume stood sealed and wrapped up in the far corner of the shelf. No one would ever enjoy its fragrant contents as long as it remained bottled up. Only if someone would come, open it, and shake it, would its scent diffuse. Hashem commanded Avraham to depart from his father's house, saying, "You have attained so high a level, Avraham. If you remain in one place, how will your fame spread? Wander about, and then the fragrance of your personality will attract people from far and near to serve me. Further, leaving your country will be to your personal benefit. If you stay here, you will not merit children, but if you change your place of residence, I will transform you into a great nation. The Jewish people will be your descendants." 4 actions have the power to change a heavenly decree. Tzedakah, giving charity; tefillah, prayer; teshuvah, improving one's deeds; shinui shayim, being renamed. Some add shinui hamakom, changing residence. We learn this last point from the fact that Hashem told Avraham, "Go out from your land, etc., and I will make of you a great nation." Avraham only merited children after changing his residence. Moving to a strange place helps annul a heavenly decree, since a man's heart is humbled when he is exiled from his home. Hashem blessed Avraham, saying, "I shall give you wealth, and I will grant you the power to bless whomever you wish to bless. I shall make your name famous in the world. I shall bless those who bless you, and those who curse you I shall curse. All families on earth will be blessed in your merit. It is because of you and your descendants that rain and dew will fall for the entire world." When Avraham heard Hashem's commandment, he questioned, "How can I forsake my old father? I have taught others to be kind and considerate. Shall I now leave my own father alone? Will your name is not desecrated? I exempt you from the obligation to honor your father." Hashem replied, "You may leave him. Your father and brothers who appear to befriend you scheme against you. They have in mind to kill you." Hashem did not reveal to Avraham where his journey would lead him. Avraham traveled to an unknown destination. This rendered the trial of his leaving home even more difficult. Avraham passed the test successfully. He did not inquire even once, "How long will the journey last? Which place is it that you have in mind for me?" About him it is stated, "I made haste and did not hesitate to keep your commandments." He immediately took his wife Sarah and the people whom they had brought under the wings of the Shekinah, and they set out on their journey. Avraham's nephew Lot also traveled with them. The departure of so eminent a man as Avraham could not go unnoticed. All nobles showered Avraham with gifts, and King Nimrod sent him a servant by the name of Eliezer to accompany Avraham and serve him. As Avraham traveled, he passed Aram Naharaim and Aram Nachor, and he observed that the inhabitants of those places spent their lives eating, drinking, and feasting. "I hope my lot will not be in this land," thought Avraham. When he arrived in the land of Canaan, he noticed that the populace occupied themselves with working the soil. He said, "I hope my portion will be in this land." Hashem appeared to Avraham in Shechem and announced, "I will give this land to your descendants." Avraham built a Mizbeach, altar, to thank Hashem for the good news that his descendants would receive the land of Israel. Avraham did not settle permanently in the city of Shechem, but continued to traverse the land. Avraham traveled throughout his life. What was the purpose of his wandering in the land of Israel? At each of his stops, Hashem gave Avraham a preview of the future events which would occur to his descendants there, and he prayed on their behalf. For example, in Shechem, Avraham prayed on behalf of Yaakov and his family, foreseeing that Yaakov's sons Shimon and Levi would in the future fight against the city. In he prayed that Hashem mitigate the punishment that would befall his children because of Achan's sin in that place. According to Halacha, one way to acquire a field is to pace its length and width. When Avraham wandered in the land of Israel, he was thereby taking possession of the land. Wherever Avraham traveled, he spread Hashem's name. He debated the true faith with thousands of people and convinced them to become his followers. The fourth of Avraham's 10 trials. Famine in the land of Canaan. As soon as Avraham and his family arrived in the land of Canaan, famine broke out. It was the most severe of all famines that the world had ever experienced, and it befell no other country except the land of Canaan. The famine was a trial, testing Avraham to see whether he would rebel against the Almighty for finding himself in this calamity. After all, had he not come to the land because of Hashem's commandment, and had Hashem not assured him of his blessings? Avraham's trust in Hashem's wisdom was inviolate, however. He never uttered a single word of complaint. He decided that it was correct to leave the land of Naan until the famine would subside. He informed his wife and household, "Let us travel to Egypt, for I have heard that food is abundant there." The fifth of Avraham's 10 trials. Sarah is taken to Pharaoh's palace. Avraham and Sarah approached the Egyptian border. Now the time had come for Avraham to warn Sarah about the impending danger. Even in Aram Naharaim and Aram Nachor, Avraham explained to her, "There was no woman as fair as you are. But now we are about to enter a country whose inhabitants are black-skinned, and therefore your beauty will be even more conspicuous." Compared to Sarah's beauty, all other women were as monkeys compared to humans. There were 4 exceptionally beautiful women: Sarah, Rachel, Abigail, and Esther. For this reason, Sarah bore the added name of Yiska, meaning everyone talked about her beauty. "The Egyptians are ruthless," Avraham explained to Sarah. "They might attempt to kill me in order to lay hands on you. For safety reasons, it would, therefore, be preferable to hide you." Even though Avraham was aware of the immorality of the Egyptians, he did not hesitate to enter the country because he perceived the Shekinah with Sarah. But rather than rely on miracles, he took all necessary precautions. He informed Sarah, "While crossing the border, we will carry you in a big valise and our men will pretend to be carrying merchandise." The customs officers noticed the oversized valise and called out, "Anything to declare? Maybe expensive china?" "If there is import tax on that, I will pay whatever the charge is," said Avraham. "Or are you perhaps bringing in gold or pearls?" "I will pay any price you demand," Avraham answered. "No, you will not get away so easily. We must open the valise and check its contents," the officers decided. "I am willing to pay any amount of money if you let me pass through," Avraham pleaded. The officers paid no attention to Avraham's entreaties. They opened the valise and found Sarah. The customs officers were stunned. They spread the rumor that a beautiful woman had arrived in the country. "She is fit for the king," they proclaimed. The news about Sarah's beauty spread quickly. Soon soldiers from King Pharaoh's palace arrived and took her to the palace by force. "Who are you and who is the man accompanying you?" Pharaoh questioned her. "I am Sarah, daughter of Haran, and he is my brother," answered Sarah. This was what Avraham had instructed her to say because he was afraid that if the Egyptians found out he was her husband, they would not hesitate to slay him to obtain Sarah. It was not a lie to call Avraham her brother, since Sarah was his niece and relatives may be termed brother and sister. Pharaoh was pleased with Sarah's answer. He sent Avraham expensive gifts: cattle, slaves, gold, silver, and pearls, and drew up a marriage contract promising Sarah all his gold, silver, and servants. He also gave her a piece of property as a gift, the land of Goshen. Now Sarah had no choice but to tell him the truth. "I am a married woman," she informed Pharaoh. "Avraham is my husband. We kept it a secret out of fear." "That makes no difference to me," answered Pharaoh. "I will nevertheless force you to become my wife." Sarah fell before Hashem and prayed the entire night. "Master of the universe," she cried out, "you know that we left our hometown for your sake. Avraham left with your promise that no harm would befall him, and I left with trust in you." Hashem answered, "I have heard your tefillah, and I swear that no evil will befall you. An angel stands next to you with a rod. As soon as you command him smite, he will strike Pharaoh and his household." Sarah commanded the angel to strike, and Pharaoh and all his nobles and slaves were smitten with boils. The plague was so severe that even the walls of Pharaoh's palace showed the symptoms of the boils. Hashem said to the angels, "The events of this night are a precedent for future events. Just as Pharaoh was smitten now on account of Avraham and Sarah, so will Pharaoh and the Egyptians be plagued in the future, and then the children of Israel liberated from the Egyptian yoke." The king was forced to free Sarah. He summoned Avraham and excused himself with the pretense that he had not known that Avraham was the husband. "Take your wife and leave immediately," he told Avraham. Pharaoh knew his people well and feared that if Sarah stayed any longer, she might yet be abused. Before Avraham left, Pharaoh gave him expensive presents. He commanded his own daughter Hagar to become Avraham's maid, saying, "It is better for my daughter to be a maid in Avraham's house than to be the princess of a different house." Pharaoh himself walked 4 steps to accompany Avraham. In return, he later merited being the king to whose country the children of Israel were exiled for 400 years. After the incident of Pharaoh taking Sarah and restoring her to her husband unharmed, Avraham's fame spread throughout the world. People admiringly exclaimed, "Even the Egyptians, who are expert magicians, were unable to harm Avraham and Sarah." Every action in our forefathers' lives was a precedent for a similar event, which would occur to their children in the future. Whatever happened to Avraham and Sarah in Egypt would be mirrored by a parallel event in the history of their descendants. Avraham descended to Egypt on account of famine. Yaakov's sons would similarly be compelled to descend to Egypt because of famine. Just as Sarah guarded herself from immodest conduct in Pharaoh's palace, the Jewish women in Egypt would guard themselves from stooping to immorality. Pharaoh was smitten for attempting to harm Sarah. Pharaoh would be plagued for harming the children of Israel. Avraham was dismissed from Pharaoh with great riches. Similarly, the children of Israel would leave Egypt with great wealth. Lot leaves Avraham and moves to Sodom. Lot had traveled with Avraham to the land of Canaan because he noticed how his fortune steadily increased if he remained in Avraham's company. When they arrived in the land of Canaan, Lot was so rich that his loyalty to Avraham weakened. The inhabitants of Canaan were idol worshippers, and Lot was attracted in his heart to their cult. As soon as Avraham sensed Lot's inclination towards idol worship, he knew that the time had come for him to separate from Lot. Moreover, there was a controversy between Avraham and Lot, and between Avraham's shepherds and Lot's shepherds. Avraham used to instruct his shepherds to muzzle all animals to prevent them from grazing in strange fields. Lot, however, left his animals unmuzzled. "You may become guilty of theft because your animals are liable to graze in fields that are not yours." Avraham's shepherds rebuked them, but Lot's shepherds insolently replied, "We have a right to pasture our animals in any field in this country. The land was promised to Avraham, who is barren and has no heir. Lot, as his nephew, is his immediate successor. We are therefore entitled to the use of the entire land as Avraham's heirs." Avraham admonished Lot, "How can you lower my esteem in the eyes of the inhabitants of this land? You know I am a stranger in their midst. Do not allow your shepherds to let the flocks graze in strange fields." Lot ignored Avraham's words. Then Avraham said to him, "Please separate from me. You may travel to your left, southwards, and I will stay where I am now, or else you may stay where you are now, and I will travel further to the right." Lot decided to move to the south and settle in the rich city of Sodom. There he hoped to accumulate even more wealth. He disregarded the fact that the inhabitants of Sodom were corrupt. They were lewd, served idols, murdered, and robbed each other. By separating himself from Avraham, Lot separated himself from Hashem. He said, "I want neither Avraham nor his God." Hashem had not spoken to Avraham if Lot was with him. After Lot had left, Hashem appeared to Avraham and comforted him, contradicting the statements of Lot's shepherds that Avraham would have no successor. Hashem assured Avraham, "Your descendants shall be like the dust of the earth. Just as it is impossible to count the dust, so shall your descendants be too numerous to count. Dust is found all over the world. Your descendants will be like the dust, spreading over the entire globe. Earth is only productive in combination with water. So will your descendants only be blessed in the merit of learning and upholding the Torah, which is likened to water, and its commandments. The sixth of Abraham's trials, Lot is captured. A messenger, the giant Og, arrived in Abraham's house with dramatic news. Your nephew Lot has been taken prisoner by King Amraphel of Babel and his allies. Amraphel was none other than Nimrod who, together with 3 other kings, had overcome an army of 5 rebellious kings which had attempted to shake off his authority. Hashem caused the 4 kings to wage war against the 5, saying, I will incite the kings to battle against each other, so that their fortune will ultimately fall into Abraham's hands. Hashem preserves the possessions of the wicked, so that the righteous can inherit them. A rich merchant had to travel to a distant country on business. His only son remained in Jerusalem, where he studied Torah day and night. In the foreign land, the merchant was taken ill and felt that his end was drawing near. Lying on his deathbed, he was troubled by the thought that his possessions might fall into the hands of the slave who was with him and never reach his son in the land of Israel. Finally, he called his slave and commanded him, Call the scribe so that I may dictate my last will and sign it. He dictated, I hereby declare my slave heir to all that I possess. My son shall inherit only one object of mine, which shall be the object of his choice. Gleaming with joy, the slave took the testament and, after his master's death, hurried back with the entire fortune to Jerusalem. There he informed the son of his father's demise and showed him the will. Heartbroken about having lost his father and having been disowned, the son went to his Rebbe to tell him his tale of woe. The Rebbe listened and smiled. Your father was a wise man, he said. He made sure that his possessions would not be stolen or lost by the slave. He gave them to his slave, knowing that if they belong to the slave, he will guard them carefully. Tomorrow, when the slave will produce your father's will before the Beis Din and claim for himself all possessions but one, put your hand on his shoulder and say, I choose this slave from among all my father's possessions. Once you acquire the slave, all that belongs to him becomes yours. The young man followed his Rebbe's advice, and the court of law pronounced him legal heir of all his father's property. Thus, Hashem made the 4 kings go to war against the 5, in order that as a result, all their possessions should be at Avraham's disposal. Among the conquered cities was Sodom, whose king had been arrested, his fortune plundered, and the inhabitants led away as captives. Thus Lot, who lived in Sodom, was numbered among the prisoners. Og's reason for informing Avraham about this piece of news was purely selfish. He said to himself, I know Avraham. He is sure to go to war to rescue Lot. He will fall in battle, and I, Og, one of the famous strong people on earth, will subsequently take Sarah as a wife. When Og arrived, he found Avraham baking matzos, since it was Pesach night. The giant pretended to be interested in this mitzvah, giving the impression that he wanted to become a convert to Avraham's faith. It was due to the giant's feigned acceptance of the mitzvah that he came to be named Og, meaning matzah cake. Og, derived from uga, cake. The battle of the 4 kings against the 5 was a fierce one, Og reported. The 4 kings slew all the giants in Ashtaroth. I am the only one who escaped. Og knew full well that Avraham's old enemy Nimrod was more interested in Avraham himself than in Lot. In fact, the enemy kings, when capturing Lot, had announced, We begin with Lot, and we will end with Avraham. Avraham also clearly realized that he would be a welcome target for the enemy's arrows. Nevertheless, he did not hesitate to come to Lot's rescue. Why did Avraham consider it correct to free Lot? Had he not separated from Lot because he found Lot to be unworthy? Yet even if Lot personally did not deserve aid, Avraham saw in him the ancestor of a righteous woman, Ruth the Moabite, mother of the dynasty of David and of the future Mashiach. In this capacity, Lot deserved assistance. When Avraham wanted to mobilize his students for war, they resisted. How do you expect to win a battle against 4 powerful kings who overcame an army of 5 kings? They asked doubtfully. If necessary, Avraham answered, I shall sacrifice my life for the sanctification of Hashem's name. Can we perform a greater Kiddush Hashem than freeing a victim from the hands of his oppressors? Avraham taught his disciples the great mitzvah of saving human lives and offered them gold and silver in exchange for accompanying him to battle. Then he called out as the Torah commands, He who fears that he committed sins shall not come to the battle, but shall rather return home. All of Avraham's followers left except for his great disciple Eliezer. Said Hashem, I will give Eliezer the strength of all the 318 people who stayed behind. The numerical value of the name, Eliezer, is to point out that his merit was equal to that of all the others combined. Avraham and Eliezer pursued the enemy at the onset of the night, while Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre helped them by guarding their belongings. Avraham miraculously took giant strides, and soon they arrived in Dan, the northern border of the land of Israel. It was there that Avraham felt himself weakened, due to the fact that one of his descendants, the king Yerovam, would set up idols in that place. The night of the pursuit was Pesach night, and Hashem said, In the first half of the night, until midnight Avraham exerted himself for my honor, ready to give up his life. In return I will reserve the second half of this same night, the night of Pesach, to perform miracles for his descendants in Egypt. Avraham continued to pursue the enemy, and soon arrived in Hova, at the outskirts of Damascus. There he battled the 4 kings, and Hashem assisted him in a supernatural manner. Whenever Avraham picked up earth to hurl at the enemy, it turned into bows and arrows. But when Amraphel shot arrows, they turned into dust. The tzaddik Nahum Ish Gamzu was so named because he was famed for his slogan, It is all for the best. No matter what hardship befell him, he was steadfast in his conviction that no evil comes from heaven, but that whatever happens to a person is good. Once the Jews of the land of Israel wanted to send a gift to the Roman emperor. They looked for an emissary and decided, Let us send Nahum, who is a tzaddik of such stature that miracles are performed for him. A chest of precious stones and pearls was entrusted to Nahum, and he set out on his trip to Rome. On the way he lodged in a hotel. At night the innkeeper arose and opened Nahum's chest. When he discovered its precious contents, he stole whatever was in the chest and replaced it with earth. Nahum checked the box the next morning and found it to be full of earth instead of diamonds, but he was not perturbed. He merely said, as usual, It is all for the best. When the emperor opened the chest and found it to contain earth, he flew into a rage and proclaimed, All Jews will be exterminated for mocking me. The messenger who brought this dust is sentenced to death. It is for the best, said Nahum, without losing his composure. The prophet Eliyahu appeared as one of the ministers and suggested to the emperor, Is it possible that the Jews have sent you the earth of their forefather Avraham? That earth is known to work miracles. When Avraham picked it up and threw it at the 4 mighty kings, it turned into lethal arrows. The emperor at that time was at war with another country whom he was unable to subdue, and decided to test the earth on his enemies. He threw it at them, and behold, the earth was transformed into deadly weapons, creating havoc in the enemy's camp. The king was deeply impressed. Release the distinguished emissary of the Jews, he commanded. Fill the box with diamonds and send it back with him. Nahum returned to the land of Israel, and on the way passed his former lodging place. Curious, the innkeeper inquired as to what kind of reception he had been given by the emperor. Nahum reported the miracle. Full of joy, the innkeeper filled another box with the same sand and presented it to the king. What are you bringing me? Asked the king. Miracle earth that turns into arrows, announced the innkeeper. The king was pleased and took it to war. But for the innkeeper no miracle happened. The earth remained ordinary earth. It fell without harming a fly. The king commanded that the innkeeper be executed. This story teaches the great merit of our forefathers, which stands by all later generations. Avraham won a splendid victory. He killed 16 enemy kings, among them Nimrod. When the war was over, the kings whom Avraham had freed as well as their subjects assembled in the valley of Shaveh cut down cedar trees and built a podium. They seated Avraham on it and exclaimed, "You are our master, you are our prince, you are our God." Avraham refused to accept any of these titles. "The world has a king, and the world has a God," he answered firmly. The king of Sodom walked towards Avraham to greet him and give him honor. A miracle had just happened to him in Avraham's merit. After he had lost the battle against the four kings, he and the king of Amorah had fled together. The area was full of lime pits, and the two kings had fallen into one of them. Normally, any person falling in these and submerged in the slime would be trapped and unable to free himself. But a miracle happened to the king of Sodom, and he escaped alive. This miracle happened to him only in Avraham's honor, for there were those who did not believe the report that Avraham had emerged from Nimrod's furnace unscathed. When they saw, however, that the king of Sodom emerged from the slime pit alive, they retroactively believed in the miracle that had happened to Avraham. "Just return the captives to me," the king of Sodom said to Avraham. "The spoils are all yours. Had we been destroyed by the saved enemy, they would have taken all our belongings. Since our fortune is yours." He offered Avraham the fortune of 16 kings. "Fool," Avraham answered him, "do you think I need your gold, silver, pearls, or other possessions? I shall not accept a single item from the spoils, not even a thread or a shoelace, so that you shall not later claim, 'I have enriched Avraham.' Just give honor, Eshcol and Mamre what they deserve for having guarded our belongings," said Hashem. To Avraham, "Since you refused even a thread, your descendants will be rewarded with the mitzvah of wearing a blue thread in their tzitzit. Since you refused even a shoelace, your descendants will merit the command of chalitza, which is performed with a shoe, as it says, 'And she shall loosen his shoe from his foot.'" By not accepting the booty, Avraham sanctified Hashem's name. He demonstrated that it was not he who had won the victory, but rather that Hashem had conducted the war. Moreover, the nations could not later say, "Avraham went to battle to acquire riches." The king told his son, "Our country is plagued by a band of highwaymen. If you want to be of service to your fatherland, kill them. But take nothing of their wealth, or else people will think that I had these robbers executed to gain possession of their fortune, rather than for the sake of performing justice." When the prince returned after having slain the bandits, without the smallest item of their belongings, the king exclaimed, "Since you refrained from taking any of their possessions, I will reward you with gold, silver, and pearls from my treasury instead." Thus, Avraham was greatly rewarded by Hashem for refusing the spoils offered to him by the king of Sodom. Avraham returned to the king of Sodom whatever was his, and restored to him the captive men and women with Lot among them. He did not, however, return the children. Avraham took the Sodomite children to his house and taught them to serve Hashem. He hoped that since they were not yet corrupt, they would turn out righteous once they were separated from the evil influence of Sodom. Avraham succeeded. All those children later acknowledged their faith in Hashem and became Avraham's followers. When Avraham approached the outskirts of Yerushalayim, one of the great men of the generation walked towards him. It was Shaim, the son of Noach, generally known by the title of Malki Tzedek, who used to offer sacrifices to Hashem and headed a yeshiva where the knowledge of the true God was taught. Malki Tzedek had prepared bread and wine for Avraham. He also wanted to reveal to him new Torah concepts. Since Avraham and Shaim lived at a distance from each other, they did not know each other, and both anticipated this meeting with hearts full of apprehension and dread. Abraham's thoughts were, "Shaim will surely curse me. I am returning from a war in which I killed his son Kedorlaomer, king of Elam, and 3 of his grandsons." Shaim was trembling, thinking, "Avraham must hate me. My wicked descendants brought mortal danger upon him." Both were unaware of the other's outstanding righteousness. Avraham had come to Yerushalayim to appease Shaim, and Shaim welcomed Avraham with a gift to show that he had no ill feelings in his heart. The two great men met. Shaim, far from cursing Avraham, gave him a blessing. "Blessed be Avraham unto the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed by the Most High, God who caused your enemies to fall before you," he exclaimed. Hashem had planned to make Shaim the forefather of all Kohanim, but since he blessed Avraham before blessing his creator, Hashem took the kahuna away from Shaim and gave it to Avraham instead. Avraham had not taken any booty for his personal use. However, he did accept a 10th part of the spoils to give it to Shaim. Avraham was the first man to separate Maser from his prophets. Hashem promises Avraham offspring. After Avraham had won the battle against the 4 kings, he was seized by fear. He worried, "I killed human beings in war. Could it be that there were some righteous ones among them?" "Do not fear," Hashem consoled him. "You plucked the thorns from the field." Avraham was still not at ease. Is it possible that my portion in the world to come has already been consumed in this world? After having been miraculously saved from Nimrod's furnace, I was now victorious over an army of 4 mighty kings. Could it be that I will therefore receive no further reward in Olam Haba? Hashem reassured him. Despite the miracles you experienced, I subtracted nothing from your future reward. You deserved all the miracles I performed for you, since you did not undertake any of your actions for yourself, but solely for my sake. Therefore, your full reward is preserved for Olam Haba. "May I put a request to you?" asked Avraham. "Ask whatever you wish," Hashem replied. "Whatever you will give me," said Avraham, "will be worthless in my eyes, since I am barren and have no children." The reason for Avraham's strong desire to have children was that he wished to raise a nation to serve Hashem. "Who will take my place after I die?" he asked. "Will it be Lot who wishes to become my heir? Or is it to be my excellent student Eliezer who teaches my Torah to others?" "Neither of these will inherit you," Hashem promised him. "Your own son will take your place." "Master of the universe," Avraham objected, "I have seen in the stars that I am unable to have a son." "Forget about your astrology," Hashem told Avraham. "Your fate is above the prognosis of the stars. The Jewish nation is not subject to mazal, natural destiny." It once happened that Rabbi Yanai and Rabbi Yochanan were standing at the gates of Tiberias. They stood side by side with 2 Gentile astrologers who observed all the workers as they were going to their jobs in the morning. "Do you see those 2 men among the workers there?" they asked the sages. "They are going out to their work this morning, but they will never return alive. They are destined to die of a snake bite." Rabbi Yanai and Rabbi Yochanan waited until the workers returned. Among them they saw the 2 workers of whom the astrologers had spoken. "Didn't you say about those 2 that they would not leave their work alive, but that they would be poisoned by a snake?" asked the sages. "Yes," confirmed the astrologers. "But they came back in peace," commented the sages. The astrologers summoned the 2 men and asked them, "What did you do today?" "The same as every morning," they replied. "We prayed Shema and Shemon Esrei and went to work." "You are Jews," exclaimed the astrologers. "The predictions of astrologers do not apply to Jews. The community of Yisrael's mazal, fate, is not absolute. They can change it through prayer, charity, and spiritual merits." Hashem promised Avraham, "Your descendants will be as numerous as the stars of heaven." Avraham had faith in Hashem and did not ask him for a sign to verify his word. How great is faith, for it was in the merit of his faith that Avraham inherited this world and Olam Haba. How important is it for people to be faithful? One may learn it from the story of the weasel and the well. A girl once wandered a long way from her father's house. Losing her way, she suddenly found herself in the desert. She walked a long time and became very thirsty. To her relief, she discovered a well in the distance. She ran towards it and found a rope inside. "Let me descend to draw some water," she thought. She descended and drank, but when she wanted to climb up, she found herself unable to do so. She cried bitterly and called for help, but who would hear her in so deserted a spot? Just then, a lad was passing by in the distance and heard a voice, crying out from the depths of the well. Amazed, he called out, "Who is this down there? Are you a demon or a human being?" The girl called up from the well, relating to him what had happened to her. She began to lament her fate in the well and begged him to pull her out. "I will help you," he said, "on one condition. Agree to marry me." The girl agreed, and he pulled her out of the well. They spoke to each other, and both consented to getting married. The boy promised that he would come to her parents as soon as possible and officially betrothed her. "Who are our witnesses that we are betrothed?" asked the girl. Just then a weasel passed by, so the lad said, "Let the weasel and the be our witnesses that we will be faithful to each other." They parted, the boy to his house and she to her father's house. She stayed at home and waited for her fiancé to come and fulfill his promise. But time passed and he never appeared. Her parents suggested other matches for her, but she refused, saying that she could not marry anyone else. No matter which match was proposed, she was adamant in her refusal. Eventually, people began to consider her queer and gave up the idea that she might ever get married. And what happened to the boy? After he had returned home, he was very busy and forgot about that episode in the desert. He married a girl in his hometown. His wife bore him a son, but when the baby was 3 months old, a tragedy occurred. The child was bitten by a weasel and died. Another little boy was born to them, but one day when he was playing by the well, he fell into it and died. Grief-stricken, the wife said to her husband, "Had our children died a normal death, I would accept the heavenly decree without questioning. But since the events were so extraordinary, we must seek the reason for this strange punishment and search ourselves for some previous guilt." Now the long-forgotten scene in the desert came to the husband's mind. "Could it be that I am being punished for not keeping my word?" he thought. He told his wife what had taken place at the well. "It is your duty to find out what happened to that girl," his wife reprimanded him. "It was your obligation to be faithful to her." The man traveled to the girl's village and inquired if there was someone by that name and whether she was married. "There is an old maid by the name you mentioned," was the answer. "But she is not in her right mind. There is no use talking to her about getting married. If a suitor comes, she begins to act in a strange manner. She spits in his face and tears his clothes." The man immediately went to the girl's house and explained to her father the story that had transpired long ago, blaming himself for the daughter's misfortune. "I have freed myself from my wife to be true to my word," he explained to the father, "and I shall marry your daughter." The father brought him to the girl, but when he attempted to speak to her, she began to scream and act strangely as she did whenever a match was proposed to her. He said only 2 words, "The weasel and the well." The girl fainted, and when she recovered, she had gained her former composure. They were married and lived a blessed life, having children and living to see their children's children. Hashem promises Avraham the inheritance of the land of Israel for his children. Having predicted to Avraham the birth of a son, Hashem now also promised him that his descendants would inherit the land of Israel. "How can I be sure of it?" asked Avraham. "Give me a sign that they will actually inherit the land." Avraham's reason for seeking a sign was his fear that as soon as his descendants would sin, Hashem would not allow them to continue living in the Holy Land. Hashem assured Avraham, "Even if they will sin, I have prepared a means of atonement for them, the korbanot, sacrifices." Hashem then demonstrated to Avraham the nature of the future korbanot by telling him to prepare 3 bullocks, 3 goats, 3 rams, a dove, and a turtle dove, representing the various offerings. Hashem commanded Avraham to cut the animals into parts except for one bird, symbolizing the halakha that only the olah sacrifice of a bird is cut, but not the shatat sacrifice. Then Hashem revealed to Avraham a vision of the distant future. A heavy sleep fell upon Avraham, during which he perceived his children enslaved in the Egyptian exile. "I shall redeem them from the Egyptian exile and also punish their tormentors," Hashem announced. The vision continued. Avraham saw his children led away from their land to be taken to 4 different exiles. First the Babylonian exile, then the Median exile, then the Greek exile, and finally the Roman exile. "You should know," Hashem told him, "that just as I punished their Egyptian adversaries, so shall I judge all tormentors of the Jewish people. You should know that just as I disperse them, so will I gather them in." You should know that just as I enslaved them, so will I redeem them." Hashem then explained to Avraham, "Instead of banishing them from their land to atone for their sins, I have another alternative." Avraham envisioned a new picture, a blazing furnace of Gehinnom. Instead of punishment in this world, Hashem explained to him, "It is possible to be cleansed from sin by the fire of Gehinnom in Olam Haba. Now, Avraham, choose. Which of the two do you want your descendants to experience if they sin, Gehinnom or exile?" The choice was agonizing for Avraham. On the one hand, he knew that tribulations in this transitory world are easier to bear than the suffering of Gehinnom. Yet how could he request exile for his children, uncertain that they would survive it? Perhaps they would assimilate among the nations and disappear altogether. It was only when Hashem assured Avraham that the Jewish people would never cease to exist on the map of history, even in exile, that Avraham voted for exile punishment. Hashem made a covenant with Avraham known as the covenant between the parts, promising him that his descendants would drive out the 10 nations living in the land of Canaan, 7 in the time of Yehoshua, and 3 more in Mashiach's time, and that they would take possession of the land of Yisrael. Avraham marries Hagar, and she gives birth to Yishmael Avraham. And Sarah had lived in the land of Yisrael for 10 years, and Sarah was still childless. A couple in the city of Tzidon had been married for 10 years without being blessed with children. They came to Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai to ask him if it was proper for them to separate. He advised them, "Just as you celebrate your marriage with a party of food and drink, so shall you make a celebration on the occasion of your divorce." The couple obeyed, and the wife arranged a banquet. As they were eating and drinking, the husband announced to her, "On leaving my house, you may take along whichever object in this house is most precious to you." When the wife heard this, she not only served her husband delectable food, but also poured him so much wine that he became intoxicated and fell asleep. Then she commanded the servants, "Lift him up carefully and carry him to my father's house." In the middle of the night, the husband awoke and found himself in a strange bed, in a strange house. "Where am I?" he called out. "Didn't you say," his wife retorted, "that I might take the dearest of all my possessions to my father's house? Is there anything in the world more precious to me than you are?" The story was reported to Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. He prayed to Hashem on their behalf. Hashem, who listens to the prayers of tzaddikim and grants children to the barren, accepted his tefillah and blessed the couple with children. Sarah said to Avraham, "I know why I am childless. It is not as people say she ought to wear kamayot, amulets, and she ought to take certain medicines. The truth is that Hashem has prevented me from bearing children. I must seek merits to make myself worthy of a child." Hashem had many reasons for withholding children from Sarah. One was that he desired Sarah to pray for children. Moreover, Hashem wanted the child born of Avraham and Sarah to be free from any negative qualities which Sarah might have inherited from her idolatrous ancestors. He therefore waited until her old age. The child then born was conceived in a miraculous manner and therefore would inherit none of the impure traits of Sarah's forefathers. Sarah said to Avraham, "Marry my maid, the Egyptian princess Hagar. Perhaps Hashem will have mercy on me in the merit of my bringing a rival into the house." Sarah's strength of character is truly amazing. Not only was it she who suggested to Avraham that he marry another wife, but she herself convinced Hagar with gentle words that it was a privilege to marry Avraham, even though he was an old man. When Hagar became Avraham's second wife, Sarah treated her with the greatest consideration. She would never receive visitors without suggesting to them that they greet Hagar also, telling them, "Go visit the tent of that poor woman Hagar and greet her." But Hagar did not require Sarah's selflessness. As soon as she knew that she was expecting a child, she mockingly told the matrons whom Sarah had sent to visit her, "My mistress Sarah is not what she seems to be. She gives the appearance of a tzaddiket, but she cannot be truly righteous. If she were, why was she not given children all these years while I was blessed immediately?" said Sarah. "Why should I argue with her? I will speak to Avraham," she reproached her husband. By being silent and not reproving Hagar for insulting me, You deprive me of the defense you owe me. May Hashem judge between me and you." Since Sarah said, "May Hashem judge between me and you," she did not reach the age of 175 years as Avraham did, but died 48 years earlier. Whoever demands justice from Hashem, as did Sarah, is then scrutinized in heaven by that same stringent judgment. Avraham answered Sarah, "Do to Hagar as seems best in your eyes." Sarah punished Hagar, at first in private. When she noticed that Hagar did not take this to heart and continued to act conceitedly, she exposed herself to public shame by giving her the humiliating task of carrying pails of water for her to the bathhouse. Sarah punished Hagar just as the teacher punishes the student for the latter's benefit, so that he should improve. Since Sarah cast an evil eye upon Hagar, Hagar lost the child she was carrying. She was thus punished for slighting Sarah's honor. Hagar fled from Abraham's house to the desert, but Hashem sent angels to give her a message that she should return to Sarah and submit to her authority. 4 different angels appeared to Hagar. Hagar showed no fear when addressed by angels because she was accustomed to the sight of angels in Abraham's household, while Manoach, Shimshon's father, who lived during the period of the judges and was shown an angel, fell on his face in terror and said to his wife, "We shall surely die, for we have seen divine beings." This shows the superiority of the former generations over the later ones. One of the angels comforted Hagar with the news, "Behold, you will conceive and you will bear a son. You should call him Yishmael, since Hashem has noticed your affliction." 4 people were named by Hashem before birth. Yitzchak, as it says, "Sarah your wife shall bear you a son, and you shall call his name Yitzchak." Shlomo, as Hashem told David, "Behold, a son shall be born to you. His name shall be Shlomo." Yoshayahu, as it states, "Behold, a child shall be born to the house of David, Yoshayahu by name." Yishmael, as Hagar was told, "You shall bear a son, and call his name Yishmael." Receiving a name before birth signifies greatness. Yitzchak was named before birth since he was the founder of the Jewish people as the first child born from holy parents. Shlomo was the builder of the Bais Hamikdash. In Yoshayahu's time, the 10 tribes were returned to the land of Israel, a forerunner of the future miracle of gathering in the exiles. Yishmael was named before birth, showing that he was given the potential to rise to greatness. Had his descendants overcome their evil impulses, they could have made themselves worthy of receiving the Torah. The angel predicted to Hagar, "Your son will be a wild man who will be attracted to life in the wilderness and to hunting animals. His hand will be raised against everyone, and all will attack him in return." Yishmael could have employed his desire to hunt in Hashem's service, to take revenge on Hashem's enemies, but he chose to become a highwayman. One of the angels who appeared to Hagar also predicted that the mighty Emperor Nebuchadnezzar would be one of her son Yishmael's descendants. Finally, the angel commanded Hagar to return to Abraham's house. Hagar was comforted. "For my suffering, I was promised a son who will beget rulers," she said. She returned to Abraham's house and gave birth to a son when Abraham was 86 years old. Abraham called him Yishmael. He knew through Ruach HaKodesh of the angel's words to Hagar, although he had not actually been present at their meeting. The 8th of Abraham's 10 trials. Brit Milah circumcision. When Avraham was 99 years old, he was given the commandment to circumcise himself. He received this mitzvah before Yitzchak was born because Hashem wanted Yitzchak to be holy from birth. Hashem informed Avraham, "As long as you are uncircumcised, you are imperfect. By performing Brit Milah, you will achieve a new degree of holiness and will be elevated above the laws of nature. For 20 generations I have waited for you to come and perform circumcision. If you refuse to perform this mitzvah, I shall return the world to nothingness." "If the mitzvah of Brit Milah is so great," asked Avraham, "why did you not give it to the first man, Adam?" "Do not question me further," Hashem said. "You are the one who was found worthy of this mitzvah." Avraham objected, "Until now I was able to influence people, but now they will be afraid of approaching me, They will not want to perform Brit Milah. Do not worry about it. Let it suffice for you that I shall be God. You will not lose out. By performing the mitzvah of Milah, you will maintain the existence of the world. I shall enter a covenant with you in the merit of this mitzvah. By observing it, your children will inherit the land of Israel. Your name will be changed from Avraham to Avraham. Until now, you were Avraham, father of your native land Aram. After your circumcision, you will become Avraham, father of many nations. The numerical value of the name Avraham equals, showing that after his Brit Milah, Avraham achieved mastery over all the limbs of his body. Hashem commanded, "The mitzvah of Milah shall be observed by all your descendants. Every newborn male shall be circumcised on the 8th day after his birth." Hashem wanted to distinguish his chosen people by a special sign. He did not create man physically perfect at birth to teach us that just as we must perfect ourselves physically through Milah, so is it our task in life to improve ourselves spiritually? Hashem then spoke to Avraham about Sarah. "In the past, your wife was called Sarah, my princess," denoting that she was a princess in your house. But in the future, her name will be Sarah, a princess for the entire world. When Hashem removed the letter Yud from the end of Sarah's name, it flew up before Hashem's throne to complain. "Just because I am the smallest of letters," it argued, "is it fair that you should remove me from the name of Sarah, the righteous woman?" Hashem comforted it. "In the past you were the last letter of a woman's name. In the future I will put you at the head of a man's name. This will happen when Moshe renames his student Hoshea, Yehoshua." Hashem promised Avraham that Sarah would regain her youthfulness and would bear him a son. Avraham fell on his face and laughed in joy at the miracle that they would have a son in their old age. "I am unworthy of such reward," he said to Hashem. "Would that Yishmael should live in fear of you?" Hashem reaffirmed his promise and told Avraham to name his future son Yitzchak. Hashem departed from Avraham, who went to consult his students Aner, Eshkol, and Mamre about the commandment of Brit Milah. The above words of our sages certainly do not imply that Avraham asked them whether to fulfill the mitzvah. The commentators have different suggestions as to the exact details which Avraham sought to clarify with the advice of his students. Avraham was not sure whether to perform Brit Milah in private or in public, since if his enemies heard that he and his household were weak from the Brit Milah, they might attack. Aner answered, "You must circumcise yourself secretly, or else the relatives of the kings whom you slew will hear of it and come to attack you." Eshkol advised, "Do not circumcise yourself at all. It is a dangerous operation in your old age, and you might lose so much blood that it will prove fatal." Avraham listened to neither of them nor asked Mamre for his opinion. "Hashem saved you miraculously from the fiery furnace," answered Mamre. "He saved you from the kings in a supernatural manner. Why do you hesitate to perform Brit Milah in public?" Hashem rewarded Mamre for his sagacious words by later appearing to Avraham on Mamre's property. "Elonai Mamre, who shall perform Brit Milah on me?" Avraham questioned Hashem. "You yourself," was the answer. Avraham took the sword and was afraid. He was an old man, and his arm trembled. "I am old," he said to Hashem. Hashem then seemingly stretched out his arm and seized the sword together with Avraham until the circumcision was completed. Avraham circumcised himself in broad daylight, and on the same day also circumcised his household, 318 men, not counting his slaves. His righteous students Aner, Eshkol, and Mamre were among those who were circumcised. Avraham's son Yishmael was 13 years old when Avraham circumcised him, yet he allowed his father to perform Milah on him without objecting. Whatever a person does or says has far-reaching effects. Never underestimate even the smallest of your words or actions. As a result of Yishmael's allowing his father to circumcise him, even though he was already 13 years of age, his descendants rose to domineering heights in history. As a result of a few words spoken by Avraham, his children were exiled to Egypt. When Hashem promised him the land of Israel, he demanded a sign, asking, "Whereby shall I know that I shall inherit it?" In effect, Hashem responded, "You shall surely know that your offspring will be strangers in a land that is not theirs." Thank you for joining this week's journey through the Midrash. If you enjoyed this story, don't keep it to yourself. Share this channel with someone. Please hit the like, share, and subscribe button for the next story. See you next week on the Midrash Says Out Loud.